Hello everyone and welcome along to your Sunday night edition of the TII podcast. My name is Craig Dennett and I'm your host on what has been a really bad day at the office for Rangers and everyone involved, I think, or associated with Rangers as well. I'm joined by both Ross Chalmers and Tommy McIntyre as we get set to unpack, I think is the best way to describe what we'll do in terms of the overall performance, the display, everything going on since the game at lunchtime today. But I think it's fair to say there'll be plenty to talk about across what's happened this Sunday. Ross, how are you?
Oh, I think you can imagine how I
am. Easy now, Ross. Easy now, Ross. Easy.
I know.
Family show.
I know. Compose myself before I answer that question. Yeah, terrible day again. I mean, let's be honest. At this point, it's what we've come to expect from these fixtures from Rangers. They just don't show up. They don't deliver. I think what was the most disappointing thing for me today with the game was I didn't see a team ready to compete, because you can look at these games and Celtic have been in good form coming into the game. We obviously had a good result last week. I think we all felt it was going to be a difficult game today going to Parkhead. It always is. But I didn't see a team ready to compete in the game. I didn't see, real determination to actually get a result. I belief in anything. And I think that's something we've been lacking for a long time now. And that's difficult to watch, as a fan and part of the support, because that's all you want from players. You want them to go on and believe that they can get a result and compete and battle for the 3 points at a very tough venue. So I think that's the thing that I really come away with after today, that again, you're sitting in a position where obviously none of us want to be here, but you want to grab onto something from the game, and I really don't think there's anything to grab onto after a performance like that today. I just thought we were embarrassing again, pathetic, to be honest with you, and that goes right across from individually and collectively to the management staff. I just thought we had an abysmal day at the office again, and I'm really not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel at the moment, which I think is where a lot of people sit, and I think that's the most difficult thing to accept. So that was probably the longest ever answer to how are you?
Yeah.
I
could have actually went a wee bit longer there. So yeah, you can probably imagine.
I imagine this is how therapists are answered to that question when they ask their patients, how are you?
Pretty
so there
much,
you go, 2 minutes 54, wrap it up, Craig. Great hosting tonight. And let's get the other side.
Yeah, I think hopefully this is a bit of a cathartic pod, both for us on the panel, but also everyone in the comments as well. Please do give your opinions. Please do put in your views. We'll bring up as many as we can as we go through the podcast. Just a couple before we come to ask how you are, Tommy, in case that lasts until the 10th minute. Gary Gray says, different clowns, same circus. Seen this game on repeat for a number of years now. A lot of failures in the team today, but Tav looked completely checked out. Should have been off in the summer. We'll come on to James Tavernier a few times, I think, in this podcast. Conor Mackay also says, absolutely raging, get Clement out, tactically inept. Whole Hadji Cantwell situation proves he lost it. We need to strip it back to basics, organisation, and hard to beat. We need a McInnes or something. Oh dear. I'm not sure that comment is one that I agree with, but it's everyone's entitled to their opinion, and emotions are certainly high after the game today. Tommy, how are you doing?
Well, at some point I should say a ray of sunshine, because everybody is in a different place. But no, listen, it's a really difficult evening, difficult performance. I think the unpack that you're talking about there, unpacking a suitcase that somebody's defecated in, to be brutally honest, and we're going to have to wade ourselves through that. So, enough of the niceties of how we're doing. Let's get into it.
Yes, let's absolutely get into it. And I think I might as well start off in a positive before we go downhill. Ross, I thought we started the game okay, and we started the game that I in a way that I thought we wanted to. For the first 10 minutes, we were pressing them high. The press looked much better without Lawrence in that midfield. I think the problem was it only lasted for 10 minutes, and we just failed to do it for the remaining 80.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can go as far as saying we started well. I mean, we had the ball in their half for a bit, but I don't know. I mean, I think to me it was more that Celtic started poorly and we just managed to get ourselves up the park for a bit.
But I thought we made them. I thought we made them start poorly though. In terms,
I think that's unnecessarily devoid of any optimism there. I think we did start pretty well. We created a couple of chances, albeit offsides and all that. I think we started faster than we have in an Old Firm game for a while. before the wheels came completely off.
Yeah, look, I'll be honest with you. I didn't think it was I thought we were okay. You know, I've seen us go to Parkhead a few times, and you're really up against it in the first 5-10 minutes, and we didn't see that. But ultimately, I don't think we started great, and I think you always know with those games and the way we've started in them. Usually, you know the inevitable is going to come, and we're going to be under pressure at some point. So yeah, okay, maybe we pressed high for a little bit. I think that you've seen a little bit of shaky moments from like Carter Vickers and things, that he was playing a few passes out wide, but again, we don't capitalise on these moments, and that is the problem. And I think that comes down to, you know, the quality of the individual. We had chances early. I think that one from Dessers, I think he is marginally offside, but he's got to score. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just such a massive moment. It's the same with Ryan Matondo, comes in at the back post. It's a free header, really. He's got to score. There's no conviction. He doesn't really believe he's going to put that in the back of the net, and that seeps into the performance. I think that's where that kind of belief aspect comes from. They're not convinced that they're going to take the lead in those games. And we all know in the Old Firm that the first goal is really important. It's always important. And we just don't have that real belief we're going to get it. And yeah, look, I think after that, I'll maybe let Tommy come on to this part, but I think what really worries me about these games at the moment is it's very, very easy for Celtic to play through us. And maybe just before we come to their goal, which is obviously around the 10-minute mark, they have that disallowed one. Now, that comes from Rangers trying to press high, right? And Sterling goes in to try and win the ball, and he's caught out of position, and it's one ball through from Cal McGregor. They're in on goal, right? And that is marginal. I mean, it's always the same with the SPFL, right? The highlights you get from the VAR decision, you don't actually know, right? We've just got to trust that one was offside. We get away with it. But that's the thing that concerned me straight away. So I've seen this pattern in numerous games now for Rangers, and especially under this manager. It's very easy for Celtic to cut us open. That was the warning sign. That should have been the point where we went, okay, we've tried to press high there. We've been caught. We probably need to restrict that a little bit now. And we didn't. And that's why we were caught again. The turnover, every single time the ball turned over today, Celtic were in. You know, that's where a few of their goals come from. For the ball turning over, we're not confident enough in possession. There's no real composure. And I think that, again, comes from that pressing high. Sterling's never winning the ball there. He's never winning it. And he goes in to try and win it, and we're cut open. So, yeah, look, maybe I'm a bit negative right now. I'm struggling with that. I wasn't completely convinced by the start. I think we've done better than usual. But I think, unfortunately, we always know how these games are going to turn out at the moment. And that's what happened.
Yeah, Tommy Ross has jumped about 4 years ahead of where I want to be in this conversation. So we'll bring it back.
I've not got to the first goal yet. Don't worry, you get plenty of time. Don't worry.
We'll come to the goals in a minute. And the first goal, I think I tweeted yesterday that I was at the stage where I thought if we made it past the first 20 minutes with a clean sheet, then we would maybe be okay. I think we made it to 16 and a half minutes before one counted. But Tommy, before we get to talking about the goals, the starting lineup, I kind of felt it was the strongest team that we could have probably put out today. It probably would have been the team that people would have picked, particularly focusing on that sort of midfield three of Sterling, Diomande and Barron in there. I don't think there was no one really seemed to have any qualms about, I guess, what the starting lineup was from the players they had to pick from.
No, I think that's probably right. Maybe a question over Matondo, possibly, but I think anybody who's saying that they would have had a completely different starting 11 or the guts of it, midfield, front, etc., centre back pairing, is being a wee bit revisionist based on the performances that they saw today. That was essentially what people were looking for. They were looking for that team. They were looking for that midfield three in terms of Diomande and Barron, etc. And let's say anything else is a bit revisionist. That was probably as strong as Clement could go. Obviously, one or two could change out, new signings and stuff like that, not being able to start. But back to maybe where Ross was a minute ago as well. You do need to acknowledge, and it's never comfortable, and I'm not going to win any friends here, but Celtic are a very good side. They're a very good side, and they recruited really well, right? And they've developed players really well. And we saw the best of some of them today as well. We also saw the gulf and a little bit of quality. You're talking about Desser's chance where he powder puffs it, offside or not, right? He is offside, but you bury that. It's good for the confidence, etc. He doesn't look like he thinks he can score. And then you get guys like Kyogo who just roll it away. We'll speak about Jack Butland and his positioning, but that's the difference there. And we've had this conversation before. That midfield stepped up and was relatively good for the first 10 minutes. But then, yeah, Celtic have got that better speed of thought, better speed of incisive passing. So when it does fall after Sterling makes a mistake with trying to step in really early and win it and pressurise it and be physical, things that everybody likes about him, by the way, you shouldn't walk past that. So he's tried to do that and got it wrong, gets turned. Next thing you know, bang, they're through. And that is just Celtic's game. You know, they're able to cut you straight open. We've never been able to solve that problem in the recent period. And we certainly in this game didn't solve it in the midfield, and we didn't solve it down the right-hand side, if you like, or down the left-hand side as they play. We continually got there, and we can talk about Alistair Johnson giving us a problem, etc. So, yeah, we're back to some of the similar conversations, and that does seem like I'm saying the exact same things, because it is the same things, and that's what's driving a lot of the support probably a little bit over the edge tonight. It's new players, same failings, same inability to step forward, particularly at Parkhead, same inability to dominate their opposite number, same inability to follow the flow of play and cover the spaces and attack that and not get cut open repeatedly, same inability to not make the same mistakes multiple times in the same game against the same players. These are the things that coaches, etc., with better players are supposed to get out. And we'll speak about Philippe Clement, we'll speak about the board, we'll speak about everybody and their dog at some point. But that's probably the heart of it. Celtic are set up to do what they do. Brendan Rodgers got them playing really good football. You know what it is, crisp passing in about, cut you down on the wide, get inside the box, etc. They can mix it up. We just didn't deal with it from, let's say, the 12th minute onwards. And it haunted us. It could have been more goals, unfortunately. Thankfully, it hasn't been. We're only talking about a 3-0 here. It's not comfortable, don't get me wrong, right? But that's the story of the game. The story of the game is Celtic being as good as they usually are, us being absolutely nowhere near it. Absolutely nowhere near it. And maybe the bigger worry, before I let everybody else jump in, because, it doesn't need to be cathartic for me tonight, to be honest with you, is that we need to start seeing a difference in approach, because we've brought in new players, even established players, who seem not to be able to get it. And we will definitely have a conversation about Robin Proper at some point as well. And that gulf doesn't seem like shortening anytime soon. Right. And I don't think the covering of a 6-0 win over Ross County is going to pull anything over anybody's eyes.
Yeah, I think we'll get stuck into, you mentioned loads of stuff we'll get stuck into there, Tommy. You've covered almost every point.
I wasn't going to bother, but then Ross tried to blow up the agenda, and I thought, right, well, I'm having a shot at it as well, right? So there we go.
I think
you'll see something as well, Craig. There you have it.
I think a sign of how much there is to talk about is that I normally write maybe about half a page of notes for us to go from. I've got 6 pages of notes for tonight's podcast for us to try and work through. So we'll see how long we're actually on for. It might be slightly longer than the hour if we don't get through them. But I think we've spoken a bit in general terms, and we'll come on to talk about the gulf between the two teams and focus on each sort of area of the team, from goalkeeper to defence, midfield and attack. But before we get there, let's just talk about the painful moments of the game, which are the goals that we conceded. Ross, the first goal, Tommy spoke about the sort of consistent failures that we see time and time again from, and it's not even from the same people. I know some of them are from the same people, but some are from new players as well. So first goal, Rabi Matondo fails to track Alistair Johnson on 2 separate occasions. Celtic get to the byline, which they like to do. They cut the ball back. Robin Proper slips, probably described that part of it as unfortunate. James Tavernier's asleep at the back post, not on his toes. Maeda is, and slots it home underneath Jack Butland, which raises some questions around him as well. There are just so many areas of fault, that we've seen time and time again. We've spoken at length as to how we think we Rangers should try and mirror what Celtic do in terms of getting to the byline and cutting the ball back, because teams struggle so hard to defend against that, and we showed that yet again. It was just so frustrating in so many different ways that we were just seeing the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah, look, I'm really bored now of Rangers gifting goals in these games, because, like I said earlier, the first goal is really, really important, and we just consistently gift them, and I just want us to do the basics, right? It's just basic stuff. Do you know what I mean? We all know as supporters that Alistair Johnson is going to make that run to the byline. He makes it constantly for Celtic. Both our fullbacks do exactly the same thing, right? So you've got to be picking that up in analysis. Even if you're not looking at analysis from previous games, just look at previous games where they've played us, right? He makes the same run every single time. And all I want from my winger in that position is to pick up your man. Like, seriously, it's just basics. Just run with your man, put him under a bit of pressure. Rabbi Matondo realises he's out, right? He realises and he does try and make up the ground. It's too late, right? So you've got to be switched on as soon as that ball goes out for a throw-in. He's meandering around. He's just, he's ran off the back of me. Oh, no, right, I'll try and catch him now. At that point, I think you're right. Robin Proper today, I don't think he had a great game. No one did, obviously. But he is unfortunate. He slips. And James Tavernier obviously feels that, you know, the centre-back's going to get there, right? But again, I don't want my defender thinking that way. I want them thinking that the ball's going to get to them and they need to be aware of it. And again, it comes down to that split second. He's not aware of Maeda on his blind side, which at this point I think he should be, because every time he plays against Dyson Maeda, he absolutely rips him apart. So he should be aware of him coming in at the back post, and he switches off. And yeah, look, it's one of those ones where it doesn't really get a great connection on Maeda, so you'd maybe say that Jack Butland could have done better, but it's close range, so I'll maybe let him away with that one. I'm not going to let him away with the second, so I'll let him away with that one. But just all around, it's just basic stuff. And a game like this, if you know we've obviously we've kind of bedded ourselves into the game the first 10, 15 minutes, right? You know Celtic are going to put pressure on you. At that point, I want Rabbi Matondo to realise the game that he's in, right? I want him to realise that he's just going to have to track runs for 10, 15 minutes. That's it. That's his job. If he gets possession, then I want him to do the basics again. I want him to try and get us up the park and drive the ball. Just can't he do it? I spoke about this, and I don't really mean to come back to him as an individual, because across the park we were rotten today, but I spoke about this on Wednesday. I think Kel asked me the question, you know, would you have sold Ryan Matondo? He scored 2 goals against Ross County last week. So what? So what? Come on. This guy's consistently not done it for us, right? And it's another big game again, and he can't do the basics. He can't track a run, and we're 1-0 down. And you know the way the game changes. It does change on goals. Celtic get everything behind them at that point, and as we've seen in previous fixtures, which I'm sure we'll come on to, we crumble mentally. Crumble. So that first goal is always super important. And again, we've not defended well. They take the lead, and you just, like, I think as a supporter at this point, you know what's coming after that. We're allowed to say that as a support, right? The players, I don't want them thinking that way. I want them to believe they've got everything they can to get back in the game. But I think we all know as supporters, you know what's going to come. You know what's coming after that. You know Rangers are going to be up against it for the rest of the game, and we've seen that.
I think just in that as well, there's some of the big casualties today, or some of the starting points, the flaws that were exposed. Again, ownership, responsibility, communication. Right. So it did look as if we weren't naturally understanding what everybody's role was at certain points.
Which is quite incredible given Philippe Clement's now been in the job for a year with many of the same players.
We'll come to talk to that at some point as well, but you're also looking for players just to own their own jersey as well. And there was points in that game where players looked like they wanted to get out of that jersey and be somewhere else. And then responsibility, maybe to Ross's point as well, of picking up your man, knowing what your job is. You know, there's a reason why I mentioned those 3 things, because they're all tied together. And you go, after the first 12 minutes, 13 minutes or whatever, we started to lose all of that because we were pressuring, right? And then it slowly but surely just completely unraveled. People then didn't track, didn't understand where the danger was, weren't being talked to by their teammates, looked like they wanted to be in any other game in any other part of the country at that point.
I think it's where that fragile mentality comes in. It wasn't even the first goal that wasn't the first goal that counted. That was the trigger. It was actually the disallowed goal was the trigger, which you think should actually be the opposite, because you should get a lift from the fact of, right, we got away with one there. Let's make sure that doesn't happen again, and let's get our foot in the ball and let's go. But it had the complete opposite effect. We just disappeared and as far into our shell as you're ever going to see us.
I couldn't agree more. You know, and like you said, you get out of jail free card is played, right? He's offside, and I think he maybe was offside, but very, very tight. But you're offside, right? Reset yourselves. We seem to go, oh, they've got us, and then surely enough, they had us. You know, and I'm with you. You're looking for a team to then coalesce at that moment. You know, midfielders get a little bit tighter, defenders sit a little bit back. You just be really, really compact. You understand that there's a little bit, they're going to come for you again because they've had one, they've had a lift, they've got a wee bit of a grievance because it's been offside. So they want to come for you again. They've spotted a flaw that's been worked on. We'll cover that. And what we naturally do is just leave the door wide open again. And you think, well, hold on, that's got to have been spoken about prior to the game. It's got to have been in the analysis pack. It's got to be in the pre-game briefing. It's got to be on the training ground in the week before. That's where you start to get people pulling their hair out, because is it a training ground thing? Is it a players in the jersey mentality thing? A combination of both, I think, is probably the answer. But that's what gets under people's skin.
Craig, can I make a quick point on this? I know we'll come on to it probably more in the podcast, but Tommy's made a lot of good points there, and we're talking about doing the basics right. And I think you watch that today, and you take the two squads of the two teams individually. I think we can all say that probably at the moment Celtic have a bit more quality than we do. Probably, I bet I'm probably being really positive towards Rangers there. I think they've got quite a bit more quality than us, right? But see, collectively as a unit, they are far better than us. Like, they work as a unit. I mean, you've seen that one, and I think it was the second half where they're 3-0 up at this stage, by the way, and Tom Lawrence is breaking, and Kyogo bursts from number 9 all the way back to track Tom Lawrence. That's how set they are in us not scoring a goal. I don't see that same level of work rate. I don't see that same level of collectiveness in this Rangers team when the going gets really tough. I think we've seen it a bit against Dinamo Kyiv as well, when we had a man sent off we shouldn't have, right? I didn't see anything that night of people grabbing people and going, right, come on, there's still a game here to be won. I don't see anything like that in the park. I'm not asking for James Tavernier to go about screaming at everyone. That's not going to help either. But I don't see this collective responsibility of this isn't good enough. This is not good enough. We need to do this. We need to change something. I don't see that. Everyone hides. And that's the difference between the two sides at the moment. They don't hide. See, when the games get tough, you've seen that at the end of last season at Ibrox, right? They were up against it that day. We were the favourites to win that game. And they showed up and they delivered, and they'd done it as a unit, as a team. I don't see that from us. Now, you can have an argument there about the individuals that maybe aren't good enough, but I think it has to come from the management staff as well, because that is quite a few Old Firm fixtures now when I'm not seeing anything. It's really starting to worry me that I don't see anything for us to cling on to and for us to progress with.
I think that's spot on, Craig, if you'll indulge me just for a second, right? And those sheets of paper that you've done as an agenda,
I've not needed to speak for 5 minutes now.
They are in the bin. They are in the bin, right? But I think Ross has absolutely got a lot right there, and a lot I agree with. Just two things I want to add to it. One, bit of a niche point. Never have I seen so many Rangers players caught on the ball. Nobody shouting man on. Unbelievable, right, today.
That one with John Suter in the box.
Yeah.
Diamande, it's the same phase of play. Diamande thinks he's got 20 minutes, by the way. That's been the same every game. And then John Suter in his own box. He's on a 6-yard box. And he's like, I'll just take my time to play it out. What is going on?
Incredible. And even that Lawrence one as well, nobody's kind of letting them know that there's people coming up behind them. So it comes back to some of that responsibility and communication stuff. But just that last point that Ross makes, which is absolutely well made, at some point, and I'm not naturally making a case for anybody here, but at some point, you only get that collective unit by being together for a long time, right, and working on it. And that needs a collective unit, as in the manager as well. So people are going to have to pitch their tent here on, one, the playing squad's not as good as Celtic's for individual reasons and monetary reasons. Then you have to say, right, how long do you stay with that? If I use the manager's words, story, right? And do you keep the manager on top of that as well? I think the club have shown that they are absolutely invested in Philippe Clement even through the tough times. That's why he was given the extension, because they thought tough times were coming. And sure enough, here we are. And can he grow that squad and get those players to start work collectively with some more senior faces coming in? Because I'm pretty sure he was desperate for a senior midfielder to come in.
Yep.
And that didn't happen. Robin Proper, question mark over being that senior leader at the back so far. It's early days, but yeah, not overly convinced about his reaction to the slip today. But that's what that needs in there as well. And that doesn't come from switching out the manager and switching over the playing staff all over again. And quite frankly, our balance sheet can maintain that either. So I'm just asking people to have that in their minds when they think about where the pragmatic decision has to be here.
Yeah, and I think this is we spoke about this during the summer. We as fans, I think we heard what John Bennett said. We heard what Philippe Clement said. Well, right, this is going to be tough this season. But I think it's another part of that reality. Seeing it all play out in front of you, seeing the same stuff happen over and over again. Some of the same characters still being there that people thought would be gone. Not enough new characters coming in to try and help us. You've got the likes of, we'll talk about Igamani's 10-15 minutes later on, and we've got Bajrami coming in the door, and these are guys that you're not quite sure. They might actually be really good and come in and make a real difference, but you don't know that at this stage. So I don't think fans have seen enough change. And actually, there's a belief that the squad's much weaker than it was last season when we knew it needed improved. And the wage bill's gone down by 125 grand a week plus. That's not going to come with an instant improvement in quality. It's going to take time. And I think the reality of seeing that is coming home to people now. And that's, we spoke about, will it get more toxic before people start to accept it? And we're probably getting towards that stage now, and it's questions over whether people will ever accept it, probably as well, at that point. But we'll come on to talk about the team and how it's performing and stuff like that. But while we're on the negativity boat, let's go into the second goal. I think just before this, I was just praying that we got to half time at 1-0, to be honest, and had that chance to get in, reset a bit. We were all over the shop for so long, pretty much since Celtic scored that first goal. Tommy, I think we were 15-20 minutes of just onslaught after onslaught. Didn't really get our foot in the ball at any point. Celtic were creating chance after chance. And then I think it's, I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it's Barron goes to play a pass to Czerny. Plays it short. I think Greg Taylor nips in front of him. It's one or two passes. They bypass the full midfield. The defense is so deep. Yeah, the defense is so deep. Kyogo's got a full half, it seems, to just wander into. And he doesn't even have to hit a good shot. It was a decent placed shot, but Butland's positioning was absolutely awful, and he just strokes it home from 30 yards without even having to put any effort in. And it was hard to describe how bad a goal that was to lose.
Yeah.
It just gets worse and worse with every replay, you see.
It does, and listen, Kyogo's a good player. He's a good finisher. Does what he needs to do. Takes up a good space between the centre-back pairing and plays a nice finish, right? That's the tail of that finish. But you're absolutely right. Barron doesn't get the pass right. Czerny's caught on his heels as well, allows Taylor in. Back to maybe Ross's point at the start as well. It's a one-pass system. He's in there. Kyogo's picked up space. Neither centre-back has went towards him, right? He's in the gap. Proper looks at him turning on it, and decides to go back the way at a diagonal whilst watching him, and then goes, oh, maybe I should press here. Kyogo looks up and goes, right, I've got nobody in front of me. There's Jack Butland, not entirely sure where he is in his own goal, right? Because he's not read that correctly at all.
Yeah.
And he strokes it away. Doesn't have to give it tons of power, because all he does is just rely on his ability to just place it. And Butland's all over the place. But the story of that, quite rightly, is Butland's poor performance in there, but also it's a goal made of a mistake midfield to forward, and that happened quite a lot because it all broke down. And then the inability of a cohesive unit for the midfield, the defence to go, that's broken down, pressure, or get ready, get tight.
Yeah. It was just too big a gap, and there were so many times where there was too big a gap between defence and midfield, and it was so easy for... Actually, at times, Celtic's midfield was the wrong side of our midfield, and it just made it so easy for them throughout so many parts of the game.
Every game we play against them, it's the same things every single game. They can turn our midfield in one pass, and they're away.
And that's why I'm saying it's worthwhile, just on that, it's worthwhile reiterating, because we've all said it in different ways, and I think people are quite rightly saying it in the comments, right? And it goes back to your point, Craig, a minute ago as well. Acting, thinking, performing like a unit. Not individual players and individual parts of the team, like a unit. Right, we know we're playing a ball into the winger who's facing us, not playing it over the top for Czerny to turn Greg Taylor. We're playing it short in. Right, Barron's doing that so we get tighter or we get ready for this, because Celtic will look to break really quickly because that's their method. No. Proper's miles away. Suter's miles away. Proper's first instinct is to back off into his own 18-yard box, essentially, and then think, oh, maybe I should press. That understanding of where you are on the pitch, where you are relative to your own players and their players, and then acting like a cohesive unit. Story of multiple failures all the time.
Ross, is that a symptom or a sign of why we really needed that to buy a number 6, an experienced number 6 in the transfer window? Is it as simple as someone like that would have had the positional sense that our current midfield didn't have, to just sit in that space and almost, because Kyogo had 30, 40 yards around him, so just we didn't have someone that had the positional sense to sit in that space and just mop up anything that came through?
Yeah, we don't have a player like that. I know Clement spoke about it in his press conference yesterday, and he said that, you know, Conor Barron can play that role and Dujon Sterling can play that role. Yeah, they can, but not very well. Do you know what I mean? That's not the type of players they are. They're both what I would say is number 8s, or people that play a bit ahead of the ball. You need someone in that role. I always go back to this. I hate doing this, but you need someone along the lines of a Stephen Davis, right? You're probably not going to get that quality. We got him towards the end of his career, and he ended up being, when he came back, of course, he ended up being probably better than we thought he was going to be when he came back. But what Stephen Davis was really good at was, off the ball, positionally very good. You know, put out fires when he had to, but also when the team were in possession, he was always an option to play through. And that's what Celtic have in Callum McGregor. That is exactly the type of player he is. He does both sides of the game really well. Now, again, I don't enjoy saying this. None of us enjoy saying this, but you've got to look at it honestly. That is exactly what they have in that player. Someone that can contribute all round, right? And that's what we need in that role. The thing I'm a little bit confused by in terms of recruitment at the club, I think it's clear now that we were definitely after that sort of role. We were pushing for Juan Jordan, regardless of people coming out and saying we weren't in for him, we never got an offer, right? I'm pretty sure we were in for him, right? Turns out it looks like he's rejected us, right? Let's just take it as is. He doesn't want to come here. That happens. But we were linked with other players like a Czech Niasse, Kenny McLean really early on in the window as well, right? A type of player that would probably thrive in a game like that, where the responsibility is off the ball, they can snuff things out. And I think that's where that comes from today. And we've seen it numerous times. Conor Barron plays a ball, it happens in football, right? A pass gets intercepted, but our shape after it is shocking. And it was shocking all day. Like, seriously, every time the ball turned over, Celtic were through. Think of that one just after, again, I think it was the second half, where the ball turns over essentially. I think Dujon Sterling's like essentially hanging on to the ball in the centre circle. They nick it off us and Kyogo's through on goal. And really, you should score, right? And again, that comes from us just not controlling the ball in there. We need someone in there. Unfortunately, we're not going to find that now until January, so we're going to have to make do. But it's definitely a poor one when it comes to the recruitment. Whoever sanctions these moves, whatever, that we haven't went and found someone in that role. Clement can come out and he can talk about that. You know, Barron can do it, Sterling can do it. Okay, they can maybe do it in most of the games in the SPFL, but they can't do it against Celtic, as we've seen today, and they will get absolutely demolished in Europe. They will not be able to compete at that level in that role. And then we're going to have to make do with that until January. Yeah,
I'm trying to forget about Europe just now and that shocker of a draw that we got. We'll just ignore that for the time being. Tommy, you spoke about Butland's positioning for that goal. It's something I was going to come on to when we talk about the teams being quite far apart in terms of quality. Butland started really well for us when he first came in. It seems to pretty much from the point where the team went downhill at the end of last season, Jack Butland's performances seem to have continued to go downhill and not kind of bounce back, or not at least shown signs of bouncing back. And today I thought he had a shocker, and he was at fault for at least one, if not two, of the goals. But that the second goal was just, I've no idea how a player of his level, of his supposed quality, finds themselves not understanding where they are in their own goal.
Yeah, listen, I'll get out front and centre and early. I still like Jack Butland. I think he's a decent keeper. With emphasis on the word decent. There's a reason why his career hasn't exploded in other places as well, and he had a really, really poor game. I think I went out my way to retweet from our X account, this is Ibrox Patrick Kasky, in terms of some of his stats as well, that Butland is now performing at a kind of end of days Alan McGregor level. That's how bad it's got. And I think I've done a good job of paraphrasing Patrick's tweet there actually, and his assessment. And that's where we are. But he's still the first choice goalkeeper at Ibrox by a fair margin, right? And he's not going anywhere. Now the argument could be made, and I think Ross made it, so I'm not going to jump on top of him too quickly in terms of him being able to voice it, that we could have maybe cashed in. I get it. If Rangers would have cashed in him during pre-season, there would have been absolute uproar, right? There would have been. I think that's a slightly utopian view of being able to cash in at that point. Although I get the argument that Rangers historically have had a problem of not cashing in on assets at the right time. But will he come good and will he still have good games? Yes. Does he have suspect parts of his game? Yeah, but I think people already kind of subconsciously knew that. You know, shots down low, positioning. It's not absolutely elite. That's it. I mean, what do you want here? The problem we have is he's also performing in front of a back four that has not been performing, which gives up extra chance as well. But to your point, and maybe the point you're trying to make, what he's not doing right now is instilling the confidence that a Rangers goalkeeper needs to do. And I'm very fond of saying it's not about multiple fancy saves. It's about that save that matters in the 90th minute or the one big chance, right? Now, today aside, teams don't get tons and tons of chances against us. They get more than they should, but don't get tons. With Celtic today, he didn't cover himself in glory with the first one. The second one is an absolute howler from a professional goalkeeper not being absolutely certain where he is in his own goal. And I don't think there's any other way to read that. Is an absolute howler, and he's going to have to face into that. He should be rightly criticised for it. He's all over the shop with that one. And whether it's he's just had a mind slip or he's caught in two minds or he just freezes.
Yeah, there's plenty of comments coming in on that one. Ian Hunter says, good keeper, but needs good defenders in front of him. DJers91 says, Jack Butland is not good enough to be Rangers number one. Blue Bells are blue. Concern with Jack Butland is he has a history of losing form and never finding it again. Blue Nose John says, Butland is no better than a journeyman. Ross, some pretty harsh criticism coming in for Jack Butland at the moment, but you can I guess I understand why. Having watched that game today and having watched, I guess it comes on the back of what happened in the Scottish Cup final, and the fact he spilled that one, and then what's happened in a couple other games against Celtic as well. It's harsh, but it's the focus is on goalkeepers for Rangers in these big games. I think he's good enough. He's obviously shown he's good enough to make the stops or the big stops in normal league games against when teams get maybe one or two really good chances and you need your goalkeeper just to step up. But it's in these bigger games where he faces more shots on his goal that he's not covering himself in glory at all.
No, he's not. I mean, that one today is just, I seen the still image for it after the game. I tried not to watch the highlights straight after the game because I was about to blow up. But I looked at the still image on Twitter maybe a couple hours after, and I mean, he's nowhere near the centre of his goal. He kind of he makes the decision. He makes Kyogo's decision for him. You always hear that about good strikers, and that take the strike when the goalkeeper's not set. You know, that's the best way. The longer you give that goalkeeper more time to set, narrow angles, things like that. Exactly the things you would expect him to be good at. He's made Kyogo's mind up for him. He's went, you're nowhere near the centre of the goal here. If I just pass that into the right-hand corner, it's going in. And Tommy picked on it earlier. It's a good finish, right? But Jack Butland's got to save that. So I think Butland's probably a victim of his own success here. When he first came in, the level he was at was ridiculous, right? Some of the saves he was pulling off. I mean, we thought, wow, what a goalkeeper we have. Some of the saves in Europe, you know, very similar that we'd seen to Alan McGregor. He was pulling us through games and he deserved all the accolades at that point. I think he maybe dropped around February, March last year, and that's maybe back to what his level probably is. But I think today you've seen it drop again, and that is concerning. Now, goalkeepers will make mistakes at times, and especially a goalkeeper that plays in Scotland, they will make mistakes, because if they didn't, they wouldn't be here, right? Simple as that. I say that about every player. I think he's probably somewhere in the middle. I don't agree with it. He's not good enough to be Rangers number one. He is good enough to be Rangers number one. I think we've seen that over the piece with him. My point about selling him was not because of his actual ability or not because of his performances. It was because he was a sellable asset and we need money to fund this rebuild. That was the only reason. It was the same way with Calvin Bassey after that Europa League run. And a lot of people were saying, that's him just coming into form. Look at the last 6 months. That's the player that we wanted to see. But that was his max value. You sell him at his max value. Simple as that. That's the model we have to get into. You've seen that across the city with Celtic. They've done it. That is why they're in the position they're in right now. It's the reason why they can go and spend 18 million on deadline day, because they sell people at the right time. They sell people at their maximum value. And I think we should have explored that for Jack Butland. Said it during the summer. I'm going to stick to it now. Tweet out again today. He would have been able to fund certain areas of that squad. But I will reiterate, I think he is good enough to be our number one. I don't think Jack Butland's I don't think he's a problem in this team. He's probably the only one that kind of gets pass parts for me overall with this team at the moment. But there's no doubt about it. He had an absolute shocker today. I listened to his interview after it, and I think he knows that. You could tell by his body language. So let's hope he responds to it. I'm expecting him as one of the leaders now to pick people up, because I don't see a lot of that throughout the squad. So, has to maybe look at himself a wee bit, and let's hope he can pick everyone else up.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Right, we'll get stuck into, I guess, the gulf and the different areas of the team. We'll just bypass the third goal, because that was just a bit of a final nail in the coffin. We didn't really threaten to get back in the game at 2-0 anyway, so we'll just bypass that one. Defensively, it's where a lot of the criticism comes. It's where a lot of the fear before the game came from, Tommy, in terms of how are we going to stand up to the pace that Celtic have in attack and how clinical they are in finishing the one or two chances that they might get during the game. I thought off the ball, when we didn't have the ball defensively, we were all over the place. Neither Suter nor Proper covered themselves in glory in any way whatsoever. And that, I thought both centre halves actually did okay when they were on the ball. I liked how Suter was trying to break the lines a little bit, but we weren't taking advantage of it. We saw, I think it was Neil McCann pointed out at one point, Suter broke into the midfield, passed it to Dessers, and then Dessers just passed it to the fullback behind him, and we just lose all positivity from doing that. And I can see the frustration on Ross's face from remembering that. But I thought they were okay on the ball, but off the ball defensively we were all over the shop. I thought that was night and day compared to Celtic defensively, who Cameron Carter-Vickers had Dessers in his back pocket pretty much the full game. Our wingers didn't do much at all. We didn't see Hefty's pace at any point. Czerny was an outball at certain moments, but it failed to do very much other than maybe keep possession a couple of times. But I thought it's night and day between the two defences.
Well, I think that's a pretty fair summation, in all honesty. I'm trying to take the heat out of it ever so slightly, in that you're right. I mean, I think today probably kills off that renaissance of Cyril Dessers conversation as well. And you're right, Cameron Carter-Vickers, arguably the best defender in the league, and he's untroubled by Cyril Dessers, right? And Greg Taylor, who I thought was really good against Czerny, nullified him, and he also knows he's in for a really not easy afternoon, but he knows that Tav's not going to be doing anything, because Maeda's got Tav absolutely on tenterhooks, right? So I come back to it, as a unit, Celtic's defence work really cooperatively with the midfield as well. There's a lot of interplay, there's a lot of dropping back. Rangers are embryonic with that, right? And remembering, although I didn't think he was stellar, Robin Proper is brand new into that, and he's working with a new partner and all that type of thing. We definitely have to say that James Tavernier is becoming a problem, right? More so than he ever was, right? The switch off is poor again for a player who is the leader, right? And has been through this all over again. I thought Hefty tried actually. I wouldn't give him pass marks, as such, but I thought he was trying his best. And there's more to come from him, 20 years of age or whatever. But the Proper and Suter, from a passing perspective, yeah, you're right. They did try to step out ever so much. They were getting nothing. That Dessers point as well of knocking it back, no, it was just, I think everybody's just put their head in their hands there. Defensively as a pair, they were all over the place. I thought Proper never really looked like he recovered from the slip, actually. And his positional sense went all over the shop. He's defending and his decision-making for Kyogo's, second, the pass, so to speak, that we discussed there, past Jack Butland. is incredible. You know, it's all in front of him. It's all in front of him, right? He sees the ball from Barron. He sees Czerny on his heels. He sees Greg Taylor nipping in. He sees the ball going into Kyogo. So instead of getting tight and letting his centre-back pair come across, he decides to back away. Now, you're 20 yards. Kyogo is known for being able to hit them from distance. He can do that. He's got that in his locker. Our senior centre-back, because he's been bought as a senior captain at his previous club, coming in here, experienced player, in that moment decides to not get tight and pressurise the ball and force Kyogo wide or put a pass backwards or whatever. He decides to back off, and all of a sudden you're looking at 2-0. Those individual moments, and that moment in particular, probably sums up Robin proper, but it probably sums up our defence in general today, that they were uncohesive, they were inept, and they didn't allow us to build a platform to try and get back into the game. Now, I'm not saying it's all on their shoulders, right? Midfield was poor, goalkeeper had a bad one. Up top, not entirely sure some of them were playing in the second half. It was really, really poor. But if you want to talk about your centre-back pairing being a fulcrum or a rock for your team, yeah, compare the likes of Proper and Suter to Cameron Carter-Vickers.
Yeah. Ross, moving on to the sort of midfield area, we've spoken a lot about stuff, real lack of the designated sitter, taken out by one pass so often. Actually, the three that were in there were the three that a lot of Rangers fans would have chosen to be their starting midfield three today, so I don't think there can be many complaints about that one. But I really wanted to just pick up on Mohamed Diomande. I think he's really struggled for quite a while now to find any sort of form similar to what he had when he first arrived. What do you think is the driver behind that? What do you think is the difficulties that he's facing in being able to do that? He's, like you mentioned earlier, he dwells on the ball for so long that he gets caught, and he gets caught by Motherwell, he gets caught by Kilmarnock. It's not just Celtic being on their toes that he gets caught by everyone.
Yeah, I mean, he wants a lot of time on the ball, Mohamed Diomande. And to be fair to him, there are a lot of times where he does maybe take a wee bit too long on the ball, but he ends up beating two men and he gets out of it and he plays a great pass. So it's maybe something we have to accept. I think in these games, in an Old Firm fixture away at Parkhead, I think you've got to realise you've not got 5 seconds to compose yourself. You've got to realise there's going to be someone on you straight away. Yeah. And he tried it several times today. He wasn't the only one. I spoke about John Suter earlier. I think overall, I think Diamande's struggling in this system that Clement wants to play, this 4-2-3-1, because he doesn't suit in a 2, being someone that's maybe got to hold his position at times. And I don't think he suits a number 10 either. I think he needs to be someone that's kind of got a bit of freedom in what we probably call a number 8, right? And unfortunately, that means you're probably going to have to go to a 3, and Clement's not going to do that. The best I've seen Diomande this season was first half against Motherwell at home. And that day we changed it slightly, and he asked Diomande to play a lot higher on the right-hand side. And I thought he was great in that first half. He was okay second, but Rangers weren't great in the second. I thought that was the best you've seen him. And I thought, again, that made sense in terms of the system where his best role probably is. So he's maybe suffering a little bit in terms of this system doesn't suit him, but that doesn't mean he's blameless in this. You can't just go, oh, well, this team doesn't suit me. Sometimes Mohamed Diamande's body language could be a little bit better. He seems to get frustrated a lot with what's going on around him, and I like that in a player. You know, they want better from everyone. Sometimes it maybe doesn't come across that way. It comes across again, you know, like petulance. Really, he's just like, you know, you're not good enough. You're not doing what I want you to do. So that's maybe something I think he needs to work on. There's no doubt there's a player in there probably on his day. He's probably our best player now. I actually don't think it's really close. But we are not getting the best out of him, and I don't think Diamande's playing to the level. But he's not the first player I think we've all sat here in this podcast and spoken about and going, we just can't seem to get the best out of him. At some point, we need to look at the structure at the club. You know, we don't seem to get the best out of anyone. Like that just goes right across the squad. So, yeah, he's probably suffering a little bit. But he's one of the players that I would have in the team every single week, regardless of where he's playing, because I just think his ability overall is better than most.
Yeah, I think we all know that he's maybe the only hope we have to sell someone on for a decent fee at this moment in time, and we really do need him to be firing, not only to mean that if he's firing, then it means we are playing better, but also because he's the one that has the promise to help us out the hole that we're currently we're currently in. Tommy, just the forward line, we've spoken a lot about them. When Ross McCausland came on, I think everyone collectively sighed. I think we all know he's not good enough to play for Rangers, really, especially in games like this. I would actually suggest that Scott Wright is better than Ross McCausland, which may be a bit controversial, but I would suggest that. But the one point I wanted to pick up on was, which I thought was strange, was the decision to bring Hamza Igamani on for his Rangers debut when we're 3-0 down at Parkhead and there's 15 minutes left, but not bring him on when we're 6-0 up at home to Ross County. What did you make of that decision from the manager?
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think you're right. It is a strange one. Someone will have to help me here in the comments or yourselves. It reminds me of when I think it was Warburton chucked a midfielder in at Tynecastle in a really tough game, and we never saw him again. He signed at the same time as Windass. He went back down south, but I cannot for the
Matt Crooks?
Matt Crooks. It was Matt Crooks. Chucked him in there and they just sank under the waves because Tynecastle was a difficult place to go at the best of times as well. But yeah, I mean, Igamani, for his touches and all that, I mean, it looked as positive as you could probably make it, but a very odd decision to say, there you go. When you've got experienced players like, Danilo and stuff like that as well on that bench, or you can shore up a different part of the pitch. Yeah, just a really odd decision, to chuck a young guy in who's been in a specialized training and training 3 days a week and all the rhetoric and the mystique that's been around Igamani as well. It's been a very odd kind of progress to then say, right, we're absolutely under the hammer here in front of a kind of baying crowd. I'm going to chuck you on, unless it's just a test by the manager to see if he can handle that and show him what the pressure's like. It's a bit of a tough one. To your point about McCausland, yeah, I get it. He's better than Scott Wright, right? Last minute winners going down south do not get you out of the cage of what Scott Wright could have been and why he didn't deliver in a Rangers jersey, because he does have some decent tools. But I think McCausland needs to make better decisions. There was a point in the second half where he just made bad decision after bad decision after bad decision in the final third. Cutting inside when he goes out, going outside when he should cut in, playing it first time or holding on to it, all these types of things. The question goes back to maybe where you were earlier, which is, when are we going to see these players develop? When you can tangibly see players get better month on month and get better within a team that's getting better month on month. That's called progression. People will understand, and I think the majority of the Rangers support will take tough moments and tough defeats if they can quite clearly see there's a tangible uplift week on week by the unit, by the team, and by the individuals inside it being better and better and better. But at some point, because we've seen some of that, right, Ross County and all that stuff, at some point that also has to translate into a tougher test. The thing is, we seem to go on little runs, and then we come up against somebody who's middling in the SPL or in Europe, or we come against Celtic and we get absolutely turned over and it's reset the button again. That's not progression. That's not something that people can hold on to and say, we're going in the right direction here. And that's why Philippe Clement's been asked questions, why the players are under the cosh, quite rightly, and why the bowlers having questions asked of them as well tonight.
Yeah, and that 0-0 draw against Hearts on opening day starts to look worse and worse every single week that goes by. Right, Ross, I think one of the main frustrations, definitely that I feel, but I know that I've seen a lot of people commenting on Twitter and social media and stuff like that about it as well, is that, okay, see if we're not good enough in terms of quality compared to Celtic, we come up against teams every week that set up in a really tactically sound way to try and stop us playing, to try and minimise any threats that we pose in the final third, and try and stay in the game for as long as they can and sneak a goal in the last 10-15 minutes. You see it 100 times a season all over Scotland when teams are playing us and Celtic. Why can we not just set up? Steven Gerrard had this set up in a really sound defensive system until we had the players to then start to attack, and that we were set up in just a sound defensive system for 2 or 3 seasons in certain games, and especially in Europe, and we found success with it. But you always knew we weren't going to get turned over by a lot of goals. It was always going to be a tight game. We didn't always come out on top, but it was always going to be a tight game. And people are saying, why can't we do that just now? You were at the press conference yesterday, and Philippe Clement's coming out and saying, we're going to go for the 3 points. I'm not really sure I wanted to hear that, if I'm honest. I'm not really sure that was what I wanted to. I'd rather say we're going to go there and we're going to set up and we're going to be tough to beat and we're going to.
He can't say that, but can he?
He can.
He's got to say we're going for the.
Yeah,
you've got to realise where you are, though, haven't you?
Surely. No, I know, but we can't sit here and say don't want to hear him saying he's going for the victory, and then we have a go at the players who don't have belief, right? So yeah. I think he's got to set himself up that we're going there to win the game. But yeah, I totally agree with your point overall. I think he's got to be pragmatic in this, and I think the thing that really worries me about Philippe Clement in these games is he's had quite a few goes at this now. And I don't see any difference in the approach from game to game. Yeah. I genuinely don't see anything different. I just see the individuals changing. And I think that's the type of manager Philippe Clement is, to be honest. I don't think he has a real style of play. This is how we're going to look in possession. This is going to look how we're going to look out of possession. Now, I'm sure he works on things, by the way. It's not just as simple as like, right, you're going to play there and go and do what you want to do, right? I'm sure there's concepts that they work on. There's a style as such. But I think he's relying on individual quality to get him through here. Like, that's what Czerny comes across to me, right? Looks a good player. Had a shocker today, by the way. But looks a good player. I think he's just relying on, okay, McCausland's going to come out and I'm going to put Czerny in. But I'm just going to hope that those individuals can do a little bit better than the last. And I think he's just wanting that across the side. I don't see any real identity for us. And I'm totally with you. Gerrard recognised that regardless of whether he felt his team were better than Celtic, he recognised going to Parkhead, you had to set up in a certain way. You had to negate certain things about Celtic style. I don't see that from us. You know, every single time, I said this earlier, I hate coming back to it, but this isn't just within the Celtic game, right, in the Old Firm fixture. See, when the ball turns over in any game for us, we look vulnerable. Like, we are exposed now, and this isn't just a thing that we've seen this season. We've seen it last season, and it's probably what undone us towards the end of the league because teams started to go, here, by the way, see the way they're set up in terms of transition, we can cut them open. So teams actually started leaving bodies forward against us because they're like, if we can win the ball here, we're through. And I see that every single time we play Celtic as well, right? They set up in a way, they kind of force us narrow. I think in possession, we don't really look we're going to do anything. And they know when they pick up the ball, they can play through us quickly. And it was the same today. I think one of you spoke earlier about the two centre-backs that looked okay on the ball, right? But Celtic let us have the ball. Let's just be clear about that. Celtic wanted us to have the ball with the two centre-backs. They wanted us to try and play. Yeah. The reason why they wanted us to try and play was they were absolutely convinced that when we tried to play through the lines, they would be able to nick it and they'd be through on us. That's the difference. And I just don't see anything at the moment that we're really trying to do things to combat Celtic's strengths. I don't like saying this. I'd love us to go into Old Firm fixtures and just play. Who cares? Who cares how good they are? We'll batter them anyway. Look, we're so much better. That we're not in that place at the moment. You've got to understand where you are in the context of things. We've got to make it more difficult for teams, and we're not doing that. Just before I come back to you as well, I cannot believe you've let Cyril Dessers off without us touching on him today. Like, seriously, I spoke about this, said it right at the beginning of the season.
We've given Cyril Dessers as much airtime as his performance deserved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's in the middle of it.
Yeah, I said at the beginning of the season.
That's what I'm trying to do.
I said it in the beginning of the podcast at the season. You can write it off. We won't win it, and him as number 9. He's no good enough in these games. Like that one you spoke about earlier, Tommy, where John Souttar breaks the lines, right? You've played it into your striker. What I want my striker at that point is to understand what's just happened. He's just broke a line, right? He's just taken 2 or 3 men at a game. This is an opportunity for us to break. He plays the ball back to Tav. It's done. All the work that John Souttar's just done to break the lines, he's just killed the whole thing. And we've seen that constantly. The whole game, he's not got any confidence with his back to goal. He won't run in behind. He won't run the channels. It's the easiest game Carter Vickers is ever going to have. Seriously, he bullies him. He throws him about. You've seen it several times today. He just throws him. It's just, that is an area that we had to address this summer, and we didn't do it. And that's why we're going into these games, and you're looking for your number 9 to do something. Maybe not even spectacular. I just want him to deliver in the moments I think he should. That one in the second half, early in the second half, the ball breaks in the box. I want my striker to show a bit of conviction, put his foot through the ball, and if Kasper Schmeichel makes a good save, he makes a good save. I'm fine with that. That's football. It happens. It just dribbles into Kasper Schmeichel. It just picks the ball up. Like, honestly, we are in trouble that Cyril Dessers is our number 9. Seriously, we're in trouble. And it doesn't look like Danilo's going to get back fit anytime soon. And Igaman looked good today, but again, you don't know where he's going to fit in. He came on the left today, but yeah, I'm struggling to deal with Cyril Dessers. There is a point on this. A lot of people say he's not the main issue in our squad. He's not. That's correct, right? Cyril Dessers is delivering more than others, but seeing a big game like that, I want my striker to make the difference, and he doesn't make the difference. That's it.
Yeah, he absolutely doesn't. I think he's, I was going to say fits the Chris Boyd mould a bit, but not as good in terms of like he'll get you the goals against the other teams in the league more often than not. But when it comes to the big games and making a real difference, he scored one against Celtic last season at Parkhead, but we're already 2-0 down at that point. The only big goal you can point to Cyril Dessers scoring, I think, off the top of my head, is the Real Betis one. That's the only big one you can point to him scoring, and we all thought that's the striker we want to see, and we've never seen that striker again at any point since that night last December. Tommy, I think one of the biggest frustrations that's coming out as well is that, okay, if there's a gulf in quality between the teams, and we've said maybe there's not a gulf in quality, but Celtic are a much more cohesive team. I do think Celtic are a much better team than us at this stage.
I never said that. There's definitely a gulf in quality as well. There's definitely in key positions. There's a gulf in quality. Dessers, Kyogo, Proper, Cameron Carter-Vickers, etc., etc.
But I'm not sure. The one thing that I think people can't accept is that Celtic look fitter, faster, stronger, and hungrier than us, and those are all things that aren't down to how good you are at football. Those are all about desire, and those are all things that how much do you want to win the game, and how much do you want to play for the jersey you're in, and we seem to lose out on all of those in Old Firms over the last year or so, and we don't seem to be making any progress on that either. Now, Philippe Clement obviously said when he came in that he wasn't happy with the fitness of a lot of players and all of that, but they've now had a full pre-season under him, and we're still seeing the same issue.
Yeah, the rhetoric's not matching up with some of the things that we're seeing, and that's never a good place for a manager, never a good place for a squad. And Celtic have got that. They've got that. You want to come and beat us, you're going to have to work incredibly hard. Whereas we've got a feeling of it's pretty thin skin, and if you get against us or you go up, then we're going to find it really hard. And particularly against Celtic, it's we hope that we can get through this. And certainly towards the end of that second half, it felt like it was more of a hope. Well, we hope they don't score more against us, as opposed to, right, let's keep fighting and see if we can get into this. We don't seem to be able to deliver on that mentality of absolute ruthlessness and the ability to say to teams, right, you should absolutely fear coming up against this jersey right now, because you are going to have to work harder than any part of the season or your career to get something out of this game. And when you think it's dead, we're still going to be there. And when you think it's over, we are still going to be there. And when you think you're banging through on goal with nobody near you, somebody's going to come out of nowhere and chase you down. Didn't seem like that was us. There was large parts of that game where Celtic players were in acres of space with nobody chasing them down, time to turn on it, time to look about, and they knew it. You could see that they weren't physically having to be aware of things, because they were like, this is a beaten Rangers side. And it's now a case of, I mean, I would imagine Celtic fans will probably be sitting there somewhere going, we should have went and got more. Right? That's probably the biggest criticism I can give to this Rangers team, in that they should have been beaten by more today. And we probably got out of it with a 3-0 that could easily have been a lot more. Now, the whole 4 shots on target conversation can just go straight in the bin. That's not a game that you've watched. Underlying of all of this is the fact that teams come up against Rangers and go, it's there. for a chance, as opposed to, right, we're already 1-0 down in the tunnel, and then Rangers are going to step on our necks. We don't do that.
One of the big concerns for me was today felt much like a Mark Warburton, Graham Murty kind of game against Celtic. And I thought we were past that. I thought we were past that stage of it. It could be however many. You go into games thinking it could be 3, 4, 5 each time. And I thought we were past that. Today was, I guess, a reminder of that and how far we've kind of gone backwards over the last year and a half or so as well, which is a real concern. Tommy, you kind of made a nice segue there almost. Ross, what did you make of Philippe Clement's post-match comments? He obviously, as Tommy said, he kind of tried to, I don't know, fudge it's maybe the wrong word, but almost say, look, the stats say it was a pretty even game with the same number of shots on target, total shots. I think there was, Celtic had 14, we had 13. Possession was pretty even throughout the game, but it's not the first time he said something like that. And then he also went on to say, well, look at last week and the 6-0 win over Ross County, and yeah, look at last week and the 6-0 win over Ross County. It's one of Rangers' best results in however many years. So you can see we're making progress. Sometimes you just, as a fan, you want to know that the manager's seeing the same game that you're seeing, and that's not what I get from Philippe Clement quite a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think with the latter there that you're talking about with the Ross County comment, I just think the manager's on the back foot there, to be honest. I just think he's on the back foot in that interview, and he just wants to come back with something in terms of, but look at us last week, it's the best result in the last 4 years of the club. I said that earlier, talking about Batondo. So what? Like, seriously, Ross County, we all knew going into that game that Rangers were going to win that game comfortably. That's the, okay, bare minimum beating Ross County 6-0 is a bit harsh, but I expect Rangers to win these games comfortably at home, right? Hampden, obviously. But yeah, that one really concerned me when I watched that earlier, because I just thought, you're kind of getting caught up in things a wee bit here. I'm with you, Craig. I would just rather the manager was really honest in these moments and just said it as it is. That wasn't good enough. That is not what we're striving towards. That is not the performance I wanted to see out there. Starting to reference stats about, shots on target, whatever, big chances created. I know the manager likes XG and things like that, but it shows you that using the stats outside of context, it doesn't really mean anything. We can all look at things and go, oh, look, we had. I think it was that Celtic had 52%, we had 48% possession. And what? It's about what you do with the ball. We don't do anything with it, and they do a lot with it. So I'm not really interested in any of these stats and trying to big your team up. I understand it, and you're maybe trying to lift the morale a little bit, but ultimately, I would just get through these interviews as quickly as possible. Say it's no good enough and go back and lick your wins and try and recover and try and pick everyone up behind the scenes. I always say when it comes to press conferences and things, right? And I know that one's not difficult to listen to, but I don't really take a lot of notice what's said in pressers and stuff, because you know that the manager is saying certain things to get a certain reaction. It's not he's not really coming and sitting there and he's talking to you one-to-one like you're his friend and he's going to be honest with you. It's just that they're media trained, completely media trained. He understands what he's trying to do. That didn't look the best for him. So I think if he might look back on that in the next couple of days and go, I probably shouldn't have said that. Actually, I'm sure if he's honest with himself. But yeah, look, everyone, as a human being at the end of the day, he's on the back foot and he's retaliated, but he probably hasn't done it in the right way.
Yeah, Tommy, one of the other things he keeps coming back to it and saying that we're at the start of a new story. I think it's fair to say, and don't speak for all Rangers fans or any Rangers fans apart from myself, but I think it's fair to say that Rangers fans are sick of hearing that, and there's no patience left for us to go through the start of a new story that's going to take 3-4 years, and a lot of people have accepted that that's going to be the case with this, where we are, and it's going to take that length of time till we're back to being where we want to be and need to be. But I think he's obviously coming at it from his perspective, having only come into the club a year ago, being faced with this tough situation where he's not really been given a great deal of money to be able to rebuild a full squad. He's got some players hanging on with with big contracts that aren't willing to move, and he's trying to do the best he can with the hand he's been dealt. What do you make of that? I think if he continues along with that rhetoric, while it's realistic in what is actually happening, I don't think he's doing himself any favours by continually referring to it, because Rangers fans are sick of hearing that from every manager pretty much that's ever come into the club.
True, but again, so if I try and take a dispassionate kind of cool look at this one, he's saying it because he's trying to get over to people. It's a build, right? He knows the pressure landscape he's in, and a day like today, some people will be calling for his head. That's not going to happen, right? He's in the chair. He's been given that extension because the club, as a whole, at the boardroom level, kind of expected this season to be rocky, and they were trying to give certainty that we're not going through the managerial firing cycle again, right? This is what you've got. These are the clothes that you are going to wear for this season, right? So, yeah, some of Philippe Clement's rhetoric is off there, and I agree with Ross. He was on the back foot. He's tried to say, but we're getting better. We're beating teams like this. That does not wash. That does not work, right? But if he's come in, he got an initial bounce, he won a trophy, then oversaw a collapse when the title was there to be won, right? And then this season has not started particularly well, right? Now, yeah, he's had to go through the cycle of, unlike recent Rangers managers, and he has had money, like he's had some money, right? Let's not say it's all been kind of out of the charity shop here, right? But he's had to get what was supposed to be senior players off, right? Now, some of them didn't perform for a lot of the period of time, but guys like Goldson, etc., were decent servants, right? He's had to cut that cloth accordingly, with the likes of John Bennett saying, I need to see the operating costs come down here, right? Both non-footballing department and footballing department. So he's having to pick up players like Inigo Mane, like a Czerny, etc., right? Some development stuff in there, some loans, whatever that looks like. Couldn't get maybe his first choices, and is trying to say, I need to keep the wheels on. I need to keep us beating people where we can, and we're going to have some bumps. Now, I'm not saying any of that's palatable, right? But that's essentially where you are. And as people say, get the manager out. Fair enough, everybody's due their opinion, right? I get it. Who comes in? Who funds the recycle of getting those players back out again and giving that manager new money? And how long do they get? Sack the board. Fine. I understand it. Who do you replace them with? Who's got pockets? Who wants to fund the club? Who wants to oversee the money that Clement might get in the winter window or next season when he's here for the next stage of that story or build or whatever word you want to throw at it? So in the heat of an Old Firm defeat, and unfortunately we've had too many recently, right? But in the heat of it, it's everything must be bad. That's fine if that's what you want. But what's your plan B? Who's coming up next? Who's going to take us forward? Right now, what you've got is a manager who does have some pedigree, who is trying to get the best out of a reduced quality squad with an eye on the future. You've got somebody who's quite clearly capable in their job in Niels Coppen and comes with a good reputation as well. And you've got people in the boardroom who have previously financed the club. I think there needs to be changes there as well. And there's lots across the club that we can do better, right? And some of that's growing. But if you are sitting here thinking you will not have more rocky days this season, then you're blinkered. Because who we've got is who we've got. And what we've got is what we've got. And we're going to see ups and downs. That's it, right? And there is no silver bullet out there. There's no shining knight. There's nothing coming in that's going to absolutely change the landscape. It's not palatable. It's not a lovely message. But that's it.
Yeah, just to add to this, Craig, no manager coming in is going to change our fortunes as it stands. No. They're not. Like, I know a lot of people looked at it at the beginning of the season when Philippe Clement was given that contract, and you know, you just look at the results, right? You look at the results since he's been here. Tommy spoke about it earlier. You know, he was here when we collapsed last season, right? Because really, we should have probably been on and won that league, and he was the manager. But I struggle to accept that we're putting all of the blame on Philippe Clement. Like I've been in this podcast for the last hour, whatever it is, and I've criticised the manager, but I don't want him sacked because I know what he's working within. You know, we've not really given him a lot to work with. Are there things that Philippe Clement could do better? Of course he can. And he has to work on that himself. But that contract at the beginning of the season was a statement to everyone and saying, regardless of how bad it gets, he is here for the long term and we're going to try and build with him. We need stability on the park. Okay. So let's just hope this is as bad as it's going to get and we're going to build from here. That doesn't give him a free pass, but we have to accept where we are. The players that we have are disposable. And I think Tommy spoke about there in terms of the board and the structure of the club. That has to be fixed pretty quick. We need to find a CEO, probably need to find an academy director. We need to actually start implementing these strategies that we spoke about in terms of player recruitment. I remember reading the fan advisory board last month, our meetings, and it was Niels Coppin's big list of how we're going to recruit players. See all the points on it. We should have been doing it 15 years ago. Do you know what I mean? You're not getting a round of applause for that coming out, saying, "Oh, that's great. We're going to recruit young, hungry talent that we can develop." We should have been doing that ages ago. You're not going to get a pass for that. So let's start actually implementing these things properly. Let's try and back the manager when we can. I understand that we're working within constraints at the moment. But yeah, Tommy's right. This is where we are. A change of manager is not going to make a difference. That is what we've done the last couple of years. And we're still sitting in this position. We're still rock bottom. So we're going to have to accept that stability is the way forward. And Philippe Clement is going to be the guy that leads that, especially, well, for this season anyway. If things go disastrously long, we all know what football's like, but he's going to be here for this season. So let's strap ourselves in and let's try and get behind the manager because, let's be honest, he's not working with a lot.
Yeah, just to finish us off, I guess, and it's where a lot of people started. Tommy, a lot of people came into the comments and said, sack the board, it's the board's fault, and it's the board are the reason why we are in this situation. We need change at the top. We need more investment. A lot of the comments were saying that. I saw a comment earlier on social media that said it was kind of along the lines of the lack of quality in the squad is the board's fault. The lack of organisation in the team on match day is the manager's fault, and the lack of effort on the pitch is the player's fault. I think it's fair to say there's blame can be spread around throughout the club for various aspects of this. But for you, where does the blame lie? Does it lie in one place, or does it spread around pretty evenly?
Well, it's multiple failures. It's multiple consistent failures as well. So the quick example of that is, does the board take some of the blame for the situation? Absolutely. They fell in love with Michael Beale, right? And then funded that. Does the playing department take some of the blame? Yeah, because they've worked with some of these players and identified them, and there's still some problems in there. Does the manager? Yeah, he's made some mistakes as well. But that, the manager and the playing department, I would probably say, are trying to work with the expectations of the support, the budget that's been handed to them, and build whilst they're unpicking the stitching of the previous manager, Michael Beale, and the board's failures in terms of recruitment, etc. I mean, we've spoken about who was a problem. Dessers up front, not a Philippe Clement signing, right? Although he did hold on to him, right? But that might be a budgetary thing as well. Getting rid of high earners, Goldson, Lundstrom, etc. These weren't brought in by Philippe Clement, but he's having to work under more constraints, I think, at this point in time than the previous managers. And he's trying to build something in there. That comes back to the point that you can have separate conversations. The board are ultimately to blame because they're in control of the club and it's supposed to be their strategic plan, right? And that strategic plan seems to have quite a lot of twists and turns to it, which makes me think it's written and rewritten, right? But the manager isn't going anywhere. He needs backed by us and by the board. The team, yeah, you can question every single one of them. But again, we're not funding a new rebuild. That's pretty much it at this point in time. Board get the majority of the blame. Manager's put in a position where I think he was also quite clear, as much as he could, that he was sold a bit of a dream, and then came in to find that budget that you might have heard us doing the phone, that was you misheard that. That budget's not exactly this, right? The decimal points moved somewhere in that. And he stayed. Some managers might have walked out. I'm still with Philippe Clement. I'm still with the board members as they are because nobody else is rocking up right now. And with those board members goes their money. But do we need to see a much more strategic, cohesive plan and see it getting better? Yeah, absolutely. Or, yeah, then serious changes need made everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Ross, just to round us off on I know you're not feeling in the most positive of moods, but just to let's try and round us off on a positive. What do you think is the way forward? Is there any positives that we can cling on to as we move into we're into international break obviously for the next 2 weeks, but after that when we come back away to Dundee United, I think off the top of my head, I think we're away to when we come back. What are the positives we can cling on to?
Well, I think I said at the beginning of this podcast there weren't any positives to cling on to, so I'm going to really struggle with this question. From today, Hamza Agaman looked good for 10 minutes. That's probably we'll probably take that as a positive. In terms of moving forward, I think Clement's going to have to just look at this as most do now with management staff, and they kind of cut the season up into blocks, and he's just going to have to look at the next block and go, let's go and get maximum points in the league, and let's try and start well in the European campaign, because that's going to be really tough for us in the Europa League. So I'm a little bit worried about the Europa League campaign this year, because that might be a real blow to our confidence in those games, because I don't see us getting many results. I would actually be surprised if we qualified through the playoffs, and we've done really well the last few years, but I would be surprised if we made it at this point just because of the depth of the squad. So look, I wish I could give you a more cheery answer, Craig, and say, we've got loads of things to look forward to, but I think as it stands, we don't have a lot to look at, and I think we're just going to have to put our trust and our faith in this manager that he turns things around. He's got another 2 weeks now on the training ground. You're hoping that he beds people in a bit more. Hopefully when we come back we see Nadim Bajrami at Tannadice. I was about to say Tynecastle there, Tannadice. So let's just hope that we start to see more bodies coming back in, and we start to see a wee bit more of a rejuvenation. But yeah, this one's sore. It's going to be sore for the next couple of weeks. And that's just what it is. It's part of being a Rangers fan at the moment, isn't it? But yeah, let's hope we come back and we beat Dundee United and we go on a bit of a run.
You tried really hard there, so thanks very much for that, Ross. You really dug deep there for that one. Right, I think we'll round it off there. We've gone for much longer than the normal hour, but there's been loads to talk about. Thank you very much to nearly 1,000 of you joining us at one stage during the podcast live. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. If you've enjoyed the content, please do drop the video a like. It helps us massively. And if you've liked what you've heard, subscribe to the TII YouTube channel or on any audio platforms as well, whether it be Spotify, Apple Music, or all the others. And you won't miss out on any of our other content that we've got coming up. We'll be keeping going through the international break, so don't worry, there'll be plenty of Rangers discussion and content coming out from there. Thank you very much to Ross and to Tommy for joining us and giving us their views. I know it's not easy after a result like today, so you guys did really well, and thank you very much to you all for listening. Hope you have a good rest of your Sunday, and until next time, goodbye.